Hey, what up, party people? Welcome to yet another edition of DJ to DJ. I'm your man, DJ Fernando G. And today, I got the honor of talking to my childhood friend, Richard Vision. What up, bro? How are you, man?
What up, sir? It's been a minute.
Yep.
It's been, God, we both, I mean, you were in Highland Park, right? We were both in Highland
Yeah,
Park,
yeah.
right? Obviously, I know I was in Highland Park.
Yeah.
You were in Highland Park,
Yeah.
like at some apartments off of York, right?
Yeah, we actually grew up Avenue 66. We moved to York Boulevard, and then we ended up at Monte Vista before we came out here to Shadow Hills.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Yeah, you and I go way, way back,
I
man.
know, man. I mean, well,
Like like day one from my DJing experience, we go back.
yeah, yeah. And even before then, because you and I went to Garvanza Elementary. We went to Pacific Christian together.
I didn't know you went to Garvanza.
Yeah, dude. I went to Garvanza. I remember I was actually ahead of you. I
Yeah,
think a year ahead of you. But I remember you, and it was funny because AJ and I were talking about when I interviewed AJ, we were talking about how in elementary you were the fastest runner. You always bragged, "I'm the fastest runner." And then in
yeah, yeah.
Pacific Christian, you were the best basketball player, the best basketball player. Franklin High School, I'm the best DJ. And that's one of the things that I
Try.
admire. I admire most about you because when I was a kid, I used to think, man, this guy's arrogant. Man, it gets on my nerves. But now I look at
Oh,
it
yeah.
and I say to
No,
my,
I was arrogant. I was arrogant. I wasn't the best, but I just had to convince myself in my head.
but I think that that's what got you to where you are today. That mentality of, you know what, just get after it, and look at you now, man, taking
Yeah,
it to
yeah,
the
yeah.
next level, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, dude, I mean, we were talking offline, we were this platform is to help DJs understand how us old timers got started and got to where we
Mm.
are. So let's start off a little bit from the beginning, dabble just a tad in that, and let's talk about when you first learned about turntables and beat mixing.
You know what? This is actually because you played a big part of the beginning of me DJing. Um, we had two turntables and a mixer. I hadn't really talked to you as a DJ yet.
Right, right.
But we didn't know you were supposed to keep things on beat. Like one turntable had pitch control, one turntable didn't. And we thought the cleanest way of mixing is when a song went into a breakdown and you just brought the other song in. Like we had no clue. It was me and my boy Mondo, who went by. He was in my crew. It was Mondo. He was in Vision, and I was
Mm.
in Vision. And we had the turntable set up at his house, and we had no clue. And it wasn't until we met you, like we didn't even know you needed headphones for the mixer. And you came over, and you like had headphones. You're like, "Where's the headphones?" We're like, "What are you talking about?" Oh, guys, you got to put the headphones in, and then you do this on the pitch control, and this is how. And you did the first mix that I ever heard in front of me, like on beat, and we were like, "Oh, we're idiots." You were like, when we were growing up, you were like the only guy that we knew that actually knew how to DJ. Like you already had it all like figured out, at least the basics of it. And
I mean,
we didn't have a clue.
at that point, I think when you and I started hanging out during that period, I was still learning. You know, because I
Right,
learned to beat mix in like around 1980. And then, but I didn't understand the concepts of timing and things like that. And
right.
you and I, if I recall correctly, we learned the concept of timing. I don't know if you remember this, thanks to Miss Wigman in dance
Yep,
class. You know,
absolutely.
and I remember
Absolutely.
that you said, check her out, check how she's counting things out, and she would say 5, 6, 7, 8, and then they would boom, and then they would do it, you know, and it was like in sync, in time with the song, and every time she hit that 8, they would do something different, and that's kind of how we put two and two together and started
Yep.
time mixing
Yeah.
as opposed to just beat mixing.
Yeah. I started figuring out how to time. I mean, but people before us had it figured out,
Oh
like
yeah,
Mondo Nemesis.
yeah,
Yeah, all those guys had it figured out, but we weren't around anybody to say,
Exactly.
hey, idiot, this is how you do it.
Right.
So, you know, at that point, it was like we were discovering something new.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I still remember we would have practice sessions at Gordy's basement
Yeah.
where we would schedule the time. Like I would get from 3 to 3:30, you would get from 3:30 to 4,
Yeah.
and then we all had like a schedule of when to practice.
Practice and
And
all.
I remember you were the best out of all of us, and we would just kind of watch you and be like, "Ah, oh, that guy knows what he's doing." And, you know, I got to figure that out.
It was fun, man. It was good times, and I remember also carrying record crates down to Vanity. Remember that when we didn't
Yeah.
have our turntables, and we used to walk down York Boulevard to Vanity, and we'd show up, and then there were days that he'd let us spin, and other days that he'd say, "Sorry guys, not today." And we'd have to walk all the way back.
Crazy.
It was
Crazy.
hilarious.
That was just to so people understand. We would go to a record store because they had Technique 1200s.
Right.
None of us could afford the Technique 1200s, so we had like crappy turntables. And if we wanted to practice on the quote for quote professional turntables, we would go to a record store / DJ system store that sometimes they would grace us by letting us. I don't know why they would let us practice at their store. Now I'm thinking it's kind of weird.
I don't know. We were just there all the time.
They were just cool. I guess
Yeah.
they were cool like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have another story to share. Is I played my first DJ set with you at a house party.
House party, yeah.
Okay. So to set up this scene, we were always practicing at our one friend's house basement, and we all were going to play at this house party. And I felt intimidated by you. And my whole thing, because you were the best out of all of us.
Thank you, dude.
And we were playing at our first party, and I was going on after you. And all I kept on saying was, honest to God, because we had all talked shit about each other.
Yeah.
We'd all rag on each other.
Yeah.
And my whole goal was just play good enough so Hector wouldn't rag on me. That's my whole goal. Just be good enough so they can't make fun of me. That was it. And if I'd done that, I succeeded. And I tell this story. So this first house party that I played at, that you were playing at before me, Vanity had taken the sound system. And they brought 50 speakers to a goddamn house party.
Remember that big old wall in front of us?
Yeah, the wall.
Yeah.
So my first party, I'm playing with somebody, you, who knows how to DJ, and you're mixing, and you're doing a good job, and there's 50 speakers looking at me. And I'm just like, what is going on? I remember my hand shaking, putting on the needle. It'd be like that, just trying to hold on. And I remember I did okay. I did good enough for nobody to make fun of me. Right, and that was my success of that.
I remember that. And it was funny because we were used to using the mixer that Gordy had. And I remember...
A realistic mixer.
Yeah. And I remember coming, and they had the Newmark with the crossfader and stuff. And we're all like, oh, shoots. And I had to kind of figure out real quick on the fly. And I'm looking at the mixer, and I'm reading it. And I'm saying, okay, that's the cue, and this, and that. And then you came up to me afterwards. You're all like, where's the cue? And I would remember pointing at it. And you're like, no, don't point at it. I don't want nobody to know that we don't know the mixer. Yeah. I go, you're right, But it was funny that we were literally, even though I was beat mixing, we were still pretty much at the same level, of learning together at the same time.
Right.
It was hilarious stuff.
It was fun times, yeah.
It was really good stuff, man. And, I mean, seriously, I have to thank you, because thanks to you is how I got my first job in radio at Power 106.
What did I do?
Yeah, you called me up and you said, hey, dude, there's a position in music research. Do you want in? I could refer you. And I was like, yeah. And I remember Faye was in charge, and I went in for the interview. You hooked it up. I got hired on the spot, and it was thanks because you referred me there, man. And then the rest was history.
Wait, didn't your brother Jerry get me in?
I think he did. Yeah, Jerry was in there before I was, and then
he was there before me. He's the one that told me there's an opening. Come on down to Power 106, and I went down, and Jerry actually. That's funny. We're all paying it forward to get into Power 106 because I was at K-Day at the time doing an internship there,
right?
And I was kind of doing some mixing on their high energy show. and mixing at some of their events. And then this was the big opening. Your
Yeah.
brother was like, hey, and I was just excited to just be in the building there.
Yeah. It was interesting how we discovered the term of having a face for radio, right? With the
Yeah.
DJs that we, idolized and admired so much, and then when we got there, we're all like, "That's him," and it was like they had these awesome voices, but it wasn't what you would expect when you see them, which is pretty much
No,
the
not
same
at all.
with me too. So, so let's get into it. Let's divulge a little bit. For you, I mean, you've been doing remixes and all kinds of good stuff. What would you say excites you most? Is it producing that track in the studio or spinning in front of the masses? Which brings up that the best in you, would you say?
You know what? They're both equally as fun. They are both exciting. Right now in my career today, I get more excited about producing the song, remixing the song. Only because I've been DJing since like ninth, 10th grade or whatever.
Right, right.
Right. So I've done a lot as in DJing and in front of people. But the excitement right now is being in the studio and just working on that song that everybody, and now with streaming,
Yeah.
that song that instantly somebody can listen in Japan, in South America, in Canada, in
Yeah.
the UK. That to me really excites me right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's like, how do you get like when I mean, obviously you've done huge name artists remixes, Madonna, and countless more. How do you get inspired when somebody comes up to you and says, Richard, we want you to do a remix for this artist? What is it that inspires you from remix to remix? What would you say is your go-to to get that inspiration?
You know what? I have to listen. I've never accepted the remix without listening to the song first. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to hear something in the song that I just go, oh, you know what? That's the magic sauce. I want to flip that. And I want to, and then you challenge yourself because you don't want it to sound anything like the original. But you're
Mm-hmm.
like, that's the magic sauce. That's the little vocal that I can take. And like the case for Madonna, when I did Madonna, she was probably the biggest artist at that point
Right.
in the world, or one of the top two or three. And I was like, oh my God, they called me and they said, would you like to remix a Madonna song? And of course, for that one, I had to say yes right off the bat, because it's not like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I remember getting the phone call, and our manager just called me and was like, yo, I hope you don't mind that I have your cell phone, but I got it from this person. And I was like, no. And so they sent a messenger over, because this is before digital.
Right.
This is
Right.
before an email like, yo, we'll send you the song right now. So they sent a messenger over, and I get the song and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to remix Madonna. I put in the song to listen to, and it's American Pie. It's Bye Bye American Pie. And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck? This is not the cool Madonna that
Right.
like she's like, I'm like, oh my God, how do I make this into a club record? Right? Which is almost impossible, because it's Bye Bye American Pie.
Right.
Doesn't matter who's singing it. And so then I got on the phone with the manager and I said, look it, because they wanted me to do a full vocal version. I said, I'll do a full vocal version, but you have to put out my dub. You can't, because that's the only way I can do it is if the dub comes out. So I had some credibility
Right.
and did something really cool. And to Madonna's credit, like I did a full vocal version that they ended up using as the main version, and it went #1 in a few different countries for her.
Nice.
But she really gravitated to my dub. So then when she came out with Music, Don't Tell Me, like her hot shit,
Right.
I was lucky enough to remix all of those. And then that's
Nice.
the year that I got nominated for the Grammy, because that's back then when they were giving Remixer of the Year.
Right.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back up. All right. So that was the year because I did all that work for Madonna, remixing music, Don't Tell Me, I think What It Feels Like to Be a Girl or something like that. And that's the year that I got nominated for the Grammy because that it was based on your year's work. So
Mm,
it was back then it was remix of the year. Now it's just remix of the
remixer.
year.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, I remember seeing you actually performing with her, right? I think was
Yeah,
it the Grammys that you got up on
it
stage
was the
with her?
Grammys. Yeah.
That's cool. That
Yeah,
is
I
awesome.
was up on stage. I was doing all those songs, and she wanted a DJ because she was going to perform music,
Hmm.
and she brought me in, and this was like my first time like working like directly with A-level talent and their team. So
Wow.
I'm brought in, and she's like, "Yeah, I want you to help the music director to put together the show." And I was like, fuck, what the fuck am I going to tell the music director, Madonna, to put the, and the music director had worked with U2 and everybody.
Right.
And I'm just in the room and they're like, do you got any ideas? I'm like, I just open up my Creative Records. How about if we put this beat underneath this part? I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Right.
But they were using my ideas, and Madonna was very helpful. You know, Madonna was like, "Yo, you know," coming up to me at rehearsal, "Hey, thank you. That loop that you added to this, that really, oh my god, that was really." And here I'm just thinking, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm like, I'm way in over my head. And there's like, we're like 60 people at the rehearsal, and it's pretty. I got a pretty funny story. So it's I basically have two jobs for the Grammy performance. One, all I got to do is take the needle and scratch it over the record, and two, I actually do a little scratch. I have two jobs. That's it.
That was it.
Very simple. So I'm so first day of rehearsal, I'm so enthralled by I'm in this hangar, 60 people, we're going over the songs, 30 dancers, and I forget. And when I do the scratch on the turntable, there's no music. So if I blow it, I blow it. And I remember just like vibing out, watching everybody, and we're in the song, and it comes to my part where I'm supposed to do the scratch, and I totally forget. And all I see is Madonna just like your mom at her maddest point, just kind of go, I got like I never fucked up after that.
You were on point after that, right after that, right? All right. So, of all the places that you've performed at, which would you say is like your favorite venue and where?
I still say, I mean, I've been very fortunate to DJ all around the world, but there's nothing like Los Angeles for me. There's still and two of I will say my best experiences is my residency at the Dome,
Nice.
because that was like our night, and we're like kids in a candy store
Yeah.
where you know we get to create the visual along with the music, and I just think to have that a club, your own night, those, and I think we did it for about maybe 4 years.
Hmm.
Um, those are some of my best memories. And then the big events when the raves really started popping off. And I
Yeah.
think the one that really stands out is when I played at the Coliseum in front of like 60,000 people. And I
Wow.
don't remember if it was Together as One or Monster Massive. It was one of those Go Ventures, and I think Pasquale was involved in one of them. But just playing in the Coliseum in
That's
front of
huge.
60,000 people in LA, I thought that was a great experience because
That's
that
awesome.
scene was just blowing up.
Yeah. And that's wild. I think I got had the opportunity of spinning at. Do you remember with the Gibson Amphitheater, which was the
Yeah.
Universal Amphitheater? So when I was on air, I played there. I think that was 6,000. I had a quick 5 minute set one year at Mariachi USA at the Hollywood Bowl, and that was
Mm,
17,000 people. But I can
right.
imagine what it's like, the rush that you must have felt in front of 60,000 people. Now, what has been the biggest audience that you've played for, actually?
Actually, this is actually really cool. My biggest audience is a live stream in my living room.
That's huge.
That's my biggest audience.
That's huge.
So we did. I've done like 3 or 4 live streams. The one I did with Irene, I think 250,000 views. And I tell people this: my biggest set was in my living room, and that's amazing.
Right.
About where technology has taken us, and I think live streams is going to be around for a long time, even when everything opens back up, because I can tell you, I can go DJ in LA at a club for 1,500 people.
Right.
But I can't DJ for everybody around the world at one time. And that was a real eye opener for me. And I did a live stream with Bad Boy Bill. We did House Connection 1, House Connection 2.0. I have another live stream coming up. I think we're going to do it in about 4 or 5 weeks.
Nice.
But those, that's been an amazing experience.
Now, it's interesting because, like, it kind of evolved real quick. I mean, quarantine, I think, helped us as far as DJs to open up our minds again and start getting creative. Because I think we were all getting kind of like on a lull of just doing kind of like the same thing, either, doing remixes, doing the club thing. And we were just kind of like there. And in a sense, it kind of opened up our minds to get more and more creative. I started seeing the first few DJs, there were local guys here. And my wife had told me, why don't you go on and do a Spanish rock set? And it was funny because she had actually told me like 4 months before quarantine. She said, what, I think, we need some rock en español and people remember you for that. And it would be cool. And I was like, yeah. And I didn't think about it. She said, just go on Facebook and do it. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I didn't think about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, pandemic hits. We're all locked in and DJs start streaming. But the sound quality was at the beginning really bad. And I think everybody was just trying to use their phones and stuff like that. But real quick, it took off. People start getting their iRigs and their Focusrites and their sound cards and start plugging things in. They start using OBS, start adding graphics. And it was just like, boom, it just takes off. Yep. And, and it was fun because I was going to ask you that, how did this help your creativity in a sense?
I was very fortunate. My wife, Alina Vision, she's a genius. So she works for the Grammys and she knows about all this technology. And she was like, hey, we can do this with multi-cameras. And this is how you do it. And my good friend Bad Boy Bill had done one, and I think he used 2 cameras, and he gave us a little insight. And then my wife just took it to another level with things. But it was awesome on the creative tip was that it's been a long time that I got to plan out a set that I didn't necessarily have to think about the dance floor. Mm-hmm. Right. It's almost like making a mix CD.
Right. Yeah.
Like back in the day where you just put together a dope ass mix, not worrying about, is this drop hard enough? Let me do this record instead of this record.
Right.
And it was like the creative level of putting together a mix that I just wanted to listen to. That was really awesome. And then it gave me a chance to like take some of the old records and flip them. So, because I just didn't, when I was digging through some old records, because I never really played classics that much. Mm-hmm. And I started listening to them and I realized like, the kick isn't right. There's no spread. So all the records that I wanted to play, I would add a kick. I would double the bass line. I would like do production to them. So they like, it felt really good. And that was a lot. I think that was a lot of fun of mixing some of the old with the new and being creative in a DJ way where I can just like, I can almost geek out as a DJ, if that makes any sense. Where I'm just like, all right, let's go into this record. Like stuff that I would never do out, I could do. And that made it a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's funny because like, as I started to see more and more DJs doing it, and it's like the group that people that follow me and stuff, they're still into the to the high energy disco and stuff, and all my friends were spinning, Sunbelt and Lime and all the original tracks, which is cool. Everybody's watching them and stuff. But I said, I don't want to do the same thing. And I did exactly what you're talking about. I literally pulled out my old laptop and started re-editing tracks and just adding beats on top of it, having fun with it, to give it my own touch and stuff, and to stand out just a little bit more. And when I saw you with Irene, that first set that you did, man, and I just, I saw it just kick off, and boom, instantly I started watching your hands. I'm saying, okay, what is he doing? Where is he going? And I just see you hitting everything, just boom, overlaying, and I'm going, wow. I go, that is amazing. So here I am doing it in my computer, and you're doing it on the flies right there, and I'm just like, dang, dude.
But to be fair, I did a lot of it in the computer so I can do it on the fly, right? So I figured out, like, just to be clear, I wasn't like, oh, let's play this record and then I'm going to do this a cappella.
Right.
I knew my set. I worked out the set.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, because I had some of my friends like, bro, how could you think that fast? I'm like, oh, I didn't think that fast. I knew the next record. I knew the a cappella.
Right.
I was just able to kind of put it, able to lay it out ahead of time and then be able to work out that. But then when you know everything, then you can have more fun and be creative with, like, the EQs or the delays and stuff.
Exactly.
But it just goes to show you, it was just I would never do a set like that live, and that's what made it so fun. Like, it brought a different creative element to it. So as each new stream comes along, I'm like, how do I, like my last live stream, I'm like, I know if I play Step by Step by Native Love, people are going to be like, oh my God. Oh, and I put other drum beats and I, just figured out ways of how to bring something old. But my thing is too, because I have the older generation, but I also have a younger generation. Yeah. So my thing is, if I choose an older record, it's got to sound fresh to a 22-year-old person. Yeah. So that's why there's certain older records that I'm just like, this is not cool. Right. It was cool back then, but if somebody hears it that's 22, it's got to be cool for them. Yeah. So that's why it was very important that I make sure that the beats and the bass was hitting right, and make sure I was choosing stuff that I felt sounded cool today.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those songs that still were way ahead of their times back in the day. But I think more along the lines of the lyrics and stuff, we've evolved so much when it comes to lyrics and stuff. And today's generation is definitely not going to be like, oh, babe, we're going to love tonight. Yeah, that's not going to fly too well. You know what I mean?
And those vocals, which is funny. And I learned this about maybe 10 or 15 years ago. One of my good friends who went by Static Revenger, that I did the song I Like That with. Mm-hmm. He's now called Latroit and just won a Grammy for Best Remix of the Year for his Depeche Mode remix 3 years ago. When we first started, he was from Detroit, and he didn't know any of this old disco stuff. So one time I came to him, I'm like, yo, let's do a record. How about if we flip this? And I played him Babe, We're Gonna Love Tonight. And he's listening to it. He's like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, it's Babe, We're Gonna Love Tonight. Don't you know it? He goes, this sounds like the cheesiest synth in Chipmunk singing. And it was for the first time I heard it for somebody else's ears who had never heard it. Right, and when I thought about it, I'm like, damn, it does sound like Chipmunk singing. Right. Damn, this is not that great of a record. Like, it's just not like, it's very, but back then it just caught a vibe.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, listening to it today, Lime doesn't work. But track-wise, it doesn't work. But you know what? Taps, My Forbidden Lover, that bass line is dope.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Burning Up.
Yeah.
That shit's dope. That's still, if you listen to those synths, and they were singing in a lower register, that stuff still works. But Lime, oh my God.
Yeah. It's funny because she always had that high-pitched voice. And, I kind of liked his voice. He had that scratchy voice, but hers was always a little too tinny for my taste. But I've never been a vocal guy. I've never been a guy that listens to the lyrics. I'm more about rhythms and, finger lines and bass lines and stuff like that. If it makes me, start doing this, I don't care what the hell they're saying. As long as that rhythm makes me dance, and I like it. But a lot of people do listen to those lyrics. They sing along to it and stuff. And if it's not relevant to them, it's just not going to fly.
Yeah.
Crazy,
absolutely.
crazy. Now, you were the first person that I had ever in my life see use a reel-to-reel 4-track. You were the first one that I ever encountered that started multi-tracking back in the day. And I'll never forget when you showed me the mix that I felt was the one that just kind of exploded, which was your 70s mix back at Power 106. And man, dude, I was just like blown away. I mean, just, mix after mix after mix, just, edited to perfection, but original songs. And it blew up, man. I remember everybody going crazy and requesting it. And I think nobody had ever requested a mix to be replayed until you came out with that. That was awesome, bro.
Yeah, that was my early years at Power 106 with the first regime, Jeff Wyatt and Al T.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first got the gig at Power, they said, all right, get with our tech guys so you can get the right equipment. Because back then all we did was record on cassettes.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I got to just turn on my mix on cassette. And I remember the guy telling me, all right, you need a reel-to-reel. And I was like, a reel-to-reel? And I had no idea. Like, he showed it to me. He said, go down to this store on Melrose. And when I went down to that store, the guy was like, all right, I've never even knew multi-track recording at this point. I'm like, I need a reel-to-reel. And he was like, 2-track or 4-track? I was like, what the hell's a 4-track? And right when he told me, he goes, so you can play 4 things at one time. And that went,
boom.
I was like, wow. I didn't get it then because I didn't have the money. So I got the one reel-to-reel that I needed to start doing mixes, but I saved up money within 6 months, I got the 4-track.
Yeah.
And the 70s mix was the first thing I ever did on it.
Yeah.
Because I started learning how to edit on the reel-to-reel, so I understood it.
Right.
So the 70s mix, probably everything's in mono, and absolutely wrong because I was putting everything on one channel. As opposed to it's supposed to be right, left, right, left.
Right.
But I had this idea from playing, I think this is around Jumbo's Playhouse. At that time, 70s was really big.
Yeah.
And I just had an idea of doing a mega mix. And I showed it to the station. And they were like, can you get this down to 3 minutes? This was I never gave it to the station, like, put this in rotation.
Right.
I just did the mix to like, yo, I want to play this in my mix. And Al T and Jeff Wyatt, to their credit, they're like, can you make this 3.5 minutes? And I said, yeah. And I brought it back to them and they put it in rotation.
Yeah.
Which to me is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Right. Because that was the time, radio was very creative and let's just do something different and put it out and not think about analytics or anything.
Exactly.
And they put it out. And funny enough, I've been cleaning out my garage during COVID, and I found the reel-to-reel. I found all my reel-to-reel. I haven't touched a reel-to-reel in 25 years.
Yeah.
And in the back of my garage, there was all my reel-to-reels, and I was like, oh, and I pulled out that 70s mix.
That's wild.
And I'm trying to explain it to my wife, because my wife grew up in Albuquerque. So she has no idea of my Power 106 years. Like, she has no clue. She's been in LA for maybe like 12 or 13 years now. And so I'm actually going to digitize it so I can play it for her so she can understand it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It'll probably sound like crap, because in our day,
right.
Back then, it was the greatest thing. But I bet if we actually listen to it now, it's terrible.
Probably all muddy and everything.
Oh, yeah. The mix is probably, yeah,
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Nah, dude, but I just
Yeah, but
remember that.
that was my first thing into like multi-track. And then when I did that, then they came to me like a couple months later and said, "Hey, we have this idea of doing a Wayne's World mega mix." And that was the first time I was like, techno was kicking off, but
Right.
nobody had played techno in rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, can you do something like that you did for the 70s mix? But then I did it with all techno records. And that kind of introduced techno
Techno.
on radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
And I think, Get Ready for This, Too Unlimited, I think Anastasia. I forgot what I was using.
Yeah.
Mama's Kick.
I know it's funny because you were always, to me, you became like a trendsetter. Because like we were talking at the beginning, like, you know, you kind of like admired me because I knew how to beat mix and all that stuff. But later the roles changed and I began to admire you because you knew how to pick hits. You knew the trends that were kicking in. I mean, it was thanks to you that I learned about techno. I learned about house and stuff. And it was like, you were like, boom, like, you got to check this out. This is going to be the next big thing. You know what I mean? Like, we were still doing freestyle when you were already into techno. We were into techno when you were already transitioning to something else, you know? And it's like, you always had your eye on the pulse, really good at that. You know, what would you say you attribute that to?
I think a lot of DJs want to uh, want to play the next thing. I think a lot of DJs have really, really good taste. But a lot of, and this is where I was very fortunate about having clubs like the Dome and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us got caught up to where we were playing for other promoters. So we were forced to play these songs because the promoter would say, no, don't play that techno or house stuff. You got to play this. This is what my crowd wants. And that was the biggest reason of doing my own clubs and my own events, because I didn't want to be locked in a box. I wanted to be able to, if I got 10 hot records that nobody ever heard, I want to go play those 10 hot records.
Right.
And I felt that having an outlet like clubs like the Dome, where I can really take the real pulse, I can drop a record and be like, oh my God, these people just snapped and they heard it for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think, and having other DJs, we had a great crew of DJs that also had a pulse. Like Tony B had a pulse.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Moore had a pulse. We're bringing in DJs, from around, for us, like we're bringing in David Morales, Little Louis Vega. That's when I started bringing in Bad Boy Bill. So we started getting a pulse of not what was just happening in LA. It was like what's kind of happening in the United States.
Right.
And I was just very fortunate to have like a mix show in a club to always push new music. And I was always for pushing new music. I like to be on the forefront of that stuff. And I've been very fortunate with all the different trends to be around some really, really good people that also had a pulse. Mm-hmm. And we were always, the people that we surrounded ourselves with, were always like, what's the new shit? Like, what's going to hit next? And I remember and also you got to thank the record stores in LA,
Yeah.
There's one person that I can say is really responsible for a lot of this pulse. Is I had a relationship with Exodus Records in Montebello.
Montebello, yeah.
And the owner of the store was named Bert. And that guy was like, fuck, I probably owe Bert a lot of my career for that guy. Because he would put records aside for me and he'd be like, yo, listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. And I had this deal with him. People probably don't even know this. I worked at Exodus for I think 2 years, just really? On Saturdays. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
I used to, a lot of people didn't know this. And it was, he would bring me in on Saturdays. And his thing was Richard Vision from Power Tools is behind the counter. And I didn't get paid. He gave me 10 imports.
Wow.
So I also had, because 10 imp, for people who don't understand that, imports were $10.99. That was
$10.99,
$100 worth
yeah.
of records.
Yeah.
So I got to go home with $100 worth of new records, and I always took imports.
Yeah.
Of like, so I was very fortunate that I had the records to be able to start being like, oh, this is new. This is going to be, this is amazing.
That is cool.
It was a bunch of different influences that helped me out, but also inside, I also as a DJ wanted to play the next thing.
Yeah.
The next, because that was my thing. I want people to be like, oh my God, what am I hearing? What is this?
Yeah, you were
And
really good at
another thing I was very lucky to see. Once something was peaking, I knew the next thing was starting.
Yeah.
So for instance, and I remember with the whole EDM wave when what's the song? I'm blanking on the song. The song with the hard kick that went pop radio with the young kid. Why am I blanking on the song?
Hard kick.
With the hard tone kick that went humongous, and Scooter Braun picked him up. But regardless, like once stuff started to hit radio and you hit the masses, and this is one thing I learned early on, and their mom started liking it.
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Then everybody starts looking, the kids start looking for the new thing.
Yeah.
For the new thing. And I think also, being around early on, like DJs like Mondo Nemesis, like he played a big influence. Like I think that guy was always pushing back then ahead of time of records and stuff, of sounds, like, or being able to present it in a different way. And I think, early on in my career, I also, what also opened my mind too, early on in my career, I started going to different clubs to hear other DJs that I liked early on in my career. And so I would actually go to a gay club in West Hollywood that Fabian used to play at.
I remember.
And Fabian, damn, for a second there, not for a second, for a few years,
yeah.
That guy was the best DJ I ever heard. Yeah. And I remember he was playing house music, and he was just doing it in a way that, like, acapellas, he like really opened my mind to like being able to get down with house music. And I think, and back then, I think the gay clubs were ahead with house music than where we were at.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I would go to Fabian's club in West Hollywood right when they would open, hang out in the DJ booth to 11 o'clock, drive to Jumbo's Playhouse, and then play there.
That's crazy. I don't know if you remember this, but thanks to Fabian, you and I were the last DJs to spin at Maryland's Backstreet. You brought me in. Fabian brought you in. I don't know if you remember, he was playing, I think, Saturday nights.
Right.
And then he brought you in. You brought me in.
Right.
And that's when he transitioned to, I think, to the club in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I remember you bringing tracks, and I remember always trying to outdo you because you would come in with these songs, and I was like, damn it, where the heck did he get that dang song, you know? And we would be spinning, and then you transitioned, you went off, and then I ended up staying there till they closed the place down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was some times, and I'll never forget that was one of the nights that Al T and Jeff Wyatt showed up to check you out spinning at Maryland's, and you were doing a killer set that night, man. But yeah, you and I were the last DJs to spin at Maryland's Backstreet in Pasadena. That was wild.
That's another place that just like, and you got to thank Boris too. Maybe you know what? Maybe pushing the boundaries and always being on the next thing was probably engraved, because Boris was the first DJ I think I heard play at a club, right? And I don't know if he was your first DJ, but Maryland's on Saturday nights. But I still, what got me into DJing is when I first went to Maryland's, I knew nothing of dance music. I listened to rock. I was a rocker in school. Mm-hmm. Like I listened to Kiss, Rush, Led Zeppelin. There was the rockers, and that's who I hung around with. And there was like the disco guys.
Right.
And luckily I had disco guys that lived on my street. I had Gordy from
Gordy.
Gemini,
Yeah.
rest in peace, and Ricky from Gemini, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that took me to Maryland's, and I had no clue. And I would stay up on the second
balcony.
on the second floor up there
Yeah.
and just watch the DJ because I didn't know how to dance. And I had no idea what he was doing because I didn't know any of the records. And it wasn't until he played "Wanna Be Starting Something," and I knew the Michael Jackson song.
Right.
And then went into the Mama Say, Mama Sa, Mahu Say, and he brought in She Has a Way. And I went, that was the first time I heard like 2 records. I went, oh, that is dope. However he's doing that, I know these 2 records, like that was amazing. Yeah. And I think Boris, man, that guy was pushing stuff.
Yeah.
He's the first person I played Madonna.
Yeah.
And I remember going, like he played, I think it was Physical Attraction or Everybody. Yeah. I mean, so maybe it was just kind of ingrained in us to like always try to push different types of music.
Yeah. It was, for me, the first DJ was actually my brother Marco. I was living in Honduras. I was a little kid. My parents had taken us over there. We were going to school. At the time over here, we were living in Highland Park in the 70s. And unfortunately, back in the 70s, it was infested with gangs and stuff. And so my dad got worried thinking that we were all going to end up in gangs and stuff. So we ended up flying Jerry and myself and my brother Marco a year later to Honduras. So we go over there. And the first year we do our schooling, like whatever. The second year, my brother Marco shows up with these turntables and a mixer and speakers. And I'm like, why does he have 2 turntables? Why not just have 1 record player if you're going to listen to music? I didn't understand it. And then he starts busting out all these tracks, Devo, Blondie, B-52s. And I'm just like, oh, and I start seeing what he's doing. And I fell in love. I mean, I always loved music. And for me, it was like, the first record I discovered was Creedence Clearwater Revival, and followed by the Beatles, Elvis Presley. And those were the artists that I thought, man, these guys are cool and stuff. And I always loved it. But Marco was the one that introduced me to beat mixing, and he tried his hardest to get me to understand the concept. And it wasn't until I had 2 records of Spin It that I was able to learn to beat match. And that's how I learned to beat mix with Spin It. And then I said, oh, wait a minute. And then I got the other song. Then it was learning how to follow a melody and a rhythm, because there were those songs like Trans-X, Living on Video, that didn't start off with a beat. And so you had to where's the damn beat? So you had to figure that out. But that's how I learned, and that was my first DJ experience. So it was, and then from there, the love for DJing just grew within. It stuck with me forever. That was really cool. So let me ask you a question. There's always been that debate of, ever since technology started to evolve and everything, and now we got controllers and all these other units that we're able to mix with. There's always the debate of DJs that if you don't spin on turntables, you're not a real DJ. What's your take on that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, you got to embrace technology. You got to embrace. There was only one time at the very beginning I didn't embrace technology for about 2 months, and I regret it. I was like, I'm just being stupid. And it was when the CDJs had just came out. I was like, CDJs? What? I got to put in CDs. At the first 2 months. And then I saw Roger S. destroy it. And I was like, all right, that's what we're moving to. The bottom line is, it's technology. You have to embrace technology. We started off with turntables that had pitch control. So the DJs before us could say, oh, you're not a real DJ unless you can play without pitch control.
Right.
But we embraced technology. The mixers got better to where we were able to cue. We're able to do more tricks. There's nothing. DJing right now, it's about, okay, the music that comes through the speakers. It's not necessarily going from one song to another song. And it's about what you're going to do coming through those speakers. Are you going to have an a cappella on top of that record? Did you do your own little mashup? Because I can tell you right now, the amount of time to put into a set, a really good set, is way more time with technology than when I had vinyl.
Right.
Because vinyl, you were limited. It was like, all right, I got 2 copies and maybe I can do a trick.
Right.
I'm going to have to go into this record. I'm going to have to go into this record. So today, I mean, it's about, yes, there's more DJs, but just like, yes, there's more producers, there's more people who can sing, and you have to embrace. The DJ is whatever's coming through the speakers, that person who's making that, the music come through the speakers, his selection, whether he's doing his own mashup, whether if he's getting creative and playing two songs in an acapella at one time. It doesn't matter if the person did not learn on turntables.
Right.
It makes no difference because you start when you start. It's like somebody going, you know what? You can't really make a phone call because you didn't make the phone call with the landlines. Ain't nobody going back to landlines.
Right.
Come on, there's no way you're going to take my iPhone away from me. And you shouldn't be like, wow, you didn't have a landline, so you're not a good phone call. It's not about
I love that analogy, bro.
Yeah, you have to embrace technology. There are great DJs that have never spun on turntables that do amazing, amazing sets.
Yeah.
Now, having spun on turntables, you might have will only help you out if for some reason your CDJs aren't locking in and you actually have to mix a record. But I don't think that ever happens.
Yeah.
To be honest,
I mean, it's evolving so quickly, and you know, they're just getting so good at it. You know, and the feel of the wheels and stuff. They're just it's the closest thing to actual turntables, man. I mean, they should be thankful that they're not spinning off of what you and I started off with, those realistic turntables, belt driven, that they would take off like 50 miles an hour when you let go of the dang record, and you still had to try to figure out how to keep it on beat.
But see, I'd rather hear the person that didn't have to deal with that, because think of how lousy that sounded.
Yeah.
Imagine you're at a party and somebody completely train wrecks. That's just terrible.
Yeah.
That's not a great, as a person that's on the dance floor, I don't want to have that experience.
Yeah.
And I've had that experience where DJs are just like, the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Yep.
And I think they've alleviated that, so I think that's fucking dope.
That's wild. That's wild. So we're coming up to the end here, bro. I know your time is precious and you got stuff to do in the studio. But what's coming up next for you? What are you working on right now?
My main thing that I've really dived into like heavily, and it's starting to come to fruition, is I have a Latina girl group that I've been developing and working with that I'm really, really excited about. They're called Sweet Taboo. And in essence, they're a Latina TLC. One girl raps, two girls sings.
Nice.
And they're all from LA. And they're like, two of the girls grew up in like, you know, East LA and San Bernardino. And the other girl grew up in like Pacoima. Like they're at the stages where you and I were in their lives, and just, you know, and it's been really exciting working on their project. They had a single out about 6 months ago, and you know, knock on wood, they'll be signed to a label. Nice. February, and I've been producing, developing them, and it's been amazing. That's been my full-time, like, last 6 months. Let's just go all in on that, because you know, I just wanted to I wanted to be a part of something of that, like, I can sit back 10 years when these girls are stars and say, hey, I helped them get their start. You know, awesome. That to me is really exciting, gets me excited to wake up in the morning, because I'm also learning. Of, you know, how social media, for their algorithms, everything, how everything works and correlates, from a video to a stream to putting something on Instagram to putting something on TikTok, and how it all correlates. And that's been really, really exciting for me.
That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, look, brother, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me, dude. It's been so long. And seriously, man, what an honor to have you on. And I thank you for your time. And for those of you guys watching, we're going to have all of Richard's link at the bottom. For those of you that are getting to know him, you're going to be in store for a great treat, because he's an amazing talent. and he has an amazing story. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing so much more about you and all your future projects. And again, thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you, man.
All right, man. Don't forget to click the like button, hit that subscribe button, as well as hitting that little bell to get notified when we have another amazing DJs right here on DJ to DJ. Have a great one.